Hey, I'm Brian Van, SportbikeTractor.com, and today we're going to break down this CRG RC2 lever install on our 2015 STG Yamaha R3. Okay, odds are if you frequent our YouTube channel or our website, you've probably seen or heard about the Truth About Motorcycle Levers video that we did a week or so ago, right? We had a customer that we were working with that had been experiencing his front brake locking up. We helped him diagnose it, via email over the phone, and found that it was his aftermarket levers, these MZS Wonder levers that you found on eBay or Amazon for like 35 or 40 bucks a set, that were creating the issue. So we asked him to send them in for us. We got him to a set of CRG levers. He's on down the road. He's super happy. Thank God he didn't crash his bike. So we put this video up there, and we expressed to people what we found, okay, with these levers, and we showed them why. Before I go any further, I want to say there's two different types of master cylinders used on most modern sport bikes. One is a radial master cylinder. This is a radial master cylinder lever, and it appears that the brake locking issue, which now there's tons of riders that have posted up on this video and expressed they've had their brakes locked caused by these levers. It appears the radial master cylinder lever is the one you really need to watch out for the brake locking gate. The axial master cylinder, like we're using on this R3, that one doesn't seem to have the brake locking problem. With that said, and we show this in the Truth About Levers video, the tolerances of these things, they're just the quality's not good, right? It's not a great part. I know a $35, $40 per set price is attractive, but it's not even realistic. You can't even manufacture a good quality part and have proper liability insurance and all those things and sell at a price like that. So that's where a brand like CRG comes into play. We have a lot of history with them, literally well over a decade of selling quality parts from CRG. We have a great experience with it. Their RC2 lever that we're going to show you in this video is available in a standard length, which we have on the R3 right now. It's also available in a short length. There's black levers, there's red levers, there's gold levers. Adjustable clickers, replaceable delrin end. It's breakaway design too. That's kind of cool if you're on this track or street and you have a tip over. If you're fortunate enough, maybe this yields before the lever's destroyed so you can finish your track weekend. You can finish your ride home as long as the rest of the bike is okay. That's kind of cool. Made here in the US, made to very specific tolerances. One of the things that CRG does that you don't see with many of the other, or if any of the other lever brands, is they're using a bearing here for the clicker. This action is just so smooth, right? The levers really feel good in your hands. It's a high quality part. When you get them out of the box and you take a look at it, you're going to see that immediately too. This RC lever is really, it looks fantastic on the bike. It feels really good in your hands. Super smooth, great stuff. If you like what you see so far and you want to understand what it takes to install them on the R3, just stay tuned. We're going to show you every step of the way. Okay, before we dive into our RC2 lever install, right, a couple points. One, that we're taking off a set of Spectrum levers we installed in another video. It doesn't mean that they're not as good as these, nothing like that. I just don't want to put the OEM levers back on the bike and do it all over again. Process is really the same. It's important to note that every one of these CRG levers comes with this lever fitment warning. We covered this in the Spectrum lever video. Especially if you've never installed levers on your bike before, take a minute and just read through this because it's really that serious. Your controls on your bike are an area you never want to take any chances. You always want to use quality parts. You want to make sure they fit correctly. You want to make sure they function correctly, that there's no contact being made with bodywork, anything like that. So follow these steps, please, and kind of use this video as a bit of a guide too, and just understand it's really that important. You lose a brake lever or clutch lever, you've got a big problem. Brake lever loss could result for sure in a crash. Okay, to install the levers themselves, very basic process. This bike uses an axial master cylinder. To remove the lever, we have a lock nut here on the bottom. We're going to start by loosening that up. This is used to make sure that the pivot bolt for the brake master lever does not come off the bike. Like I said before, you lose that, obviously you're in big trouble. Remove the lock nut, and now we need to remove The pivot bolt, you can see that was threaded into the Master 2, right? And it had torque on it. That nut is put on the bottom only to ensure that this can't come loose. Let's go ahead and remove that, like so. Now what I like to do is I like to take my time here and clean up the pivot bolt really nice, take a good look at it, make sure everything looks good, no cracks, no fractures, and odds are you're not going to see anything like that, but it doesn't hurt to look at it when you have it in your hands. Do the same with your brake master, and I want you to clean out the inside where the lever was. Okay, there's a little bit of lubricant used from the factory. Just want to take a minute, kind of wipe that off. And we'll of course use new grease. Got some multi-purpose grease here, some synthetic stuff that we'll use to lubricate everything because you want this action to be super smooth. I put just a little bit on my finger and just put the tiniest little bit on the end of that master cylinder piston because there is a little bit of contact there. You want that to be smooth. And now we'll get the brake lever. I'm going to lubricate inside here where that pivot bolt's going to ride. Okay. Put a thin film in here. We'll wipe up any excess after the install. The idea here is just to have a thin film. You don't want a ton of excess or anything. Okay, now let's take the brake lever, slide it into position. We don't have a brake light switch on this bike anymore. It would reside over here in this position. You want to make sure that when you're sliding the lever in, that you're not coming at the plunger from an angle and putting pressure on the drive pin for that plunger. So take a look at it, visually see it, and make sure that you're pushing back on it. Get your lever here in position. Get your pivot bolt in there. Start the threads, of course, by hand. Okay, I've got that started. Go and torque the pivot bolt, like so. The lock nut. You want to make sure that the locking portion of the nut is installed facing away from the master cylinder. Let's get that started. By hand, you feel it stop once it hits the locking portion. I'm going to use a backup wrench now. So we can snug this up. Okay. Any excess grease, just take a minute, clean that off. Now let's take a look at the lever. Make sure everything's moving freely. Just gonna use the adjuster a bit. The RC2 levers actually feature, it's a breakaway portion here, so if you have a wreck, instead of hopefully bending the lever, it can break here, and there's also a replaceable delrin tip on the end that is meant to grind away faster. All this is done so if you have a tip over or a crash, hopefully the lever is usable after impact. It's really hit or miss, depends on your crash. Okay, now let's get this dialed in, and we went from an OE lever to a short lever and now to this full length RC2. This lever is available in short and standard length. For racing, or track riding, standard length is typically my preference. So that's what we decided to go with here on the R3. Make a minor adjustment there, bring it a little more inboard. All right, that all looks good. Sweep the bars back and forth, make sure everything is moving freely, no contact points. All looks great. Now we're ready to go over and do the clutch lever. We're going to begin by adjusting the clutch cable. You want to get as much slack in it as possible. Just broke the lock loose. We're going to rotate the adjuster around. Loosen it as much as possible. You can see we have a slot in the adjuster, a slot in the lock, and then there is a slot that's right here in the OEM clutch perch. You want to make sure those are all lined up. Now, we're going to use a 1/4 drive ratchet, 10 mil socket. There's a carriage bolt that's used here with a 10 mil lock nut. You need to remove the nut. Just hold a little downward pressure on that carriage bolt. Very simple. This is a different setup than we saw over there on the brake side, where the actual pivot bolt itself threaded in to the master cylinder. On this side, using a carriage style bolt that just locks in place with the machine groove in the OE clutch perch. Let's go ahead and get that off. Now the lever itself, slide it out. Make sure you don't lose that bushing. And from here, you're able to remove the clutch cable by sliding it through the slots when everything is lined up. Rotate the lever over and pull the cable out. We need to reuse this bushing. We removed it from the OEM lever. The OEM lever has this bushing slid through the lever, and it also has an O-ring that you do not reuse because the aftermarket lever does not have a machine groove that accepts that O-ring. Okay, so there's no need to reuse that. Go ahead and clean everything off just like we did on the brake side. Some of this is redundant because obviously I just cleaned this up and lubricated it for the Spectrum levers, but still we want to show you the whole gig here. Now let's lubricate that RC2. We've removed the clutch switch from this bike as we have the brake light switch. It's a track only race bike now. Okay, so this installation is going to look a little bit different. I'm lubricating the spot where the bushing goes through. I'm going to also lubricate where the clutch cable pivots there in the lever. Also like to just get a little bit inside the bushing here. Now we'll slide the bushing in through the lever, like so. Let's go ahead and put the bolt through, kind of spin that around. And the reason I'm really doing that is I want to be able to clean the bolt, the threads back off before I slide that back in. Okay, now we're ready to go over to the bike after we just put a little film of grease where it's going to contact the flat points here. You really don't need to be too crazy with that. Just a thin film is all you want. You don't want a bunch of excess either, because that'll just, collect dirt and grime. Not a bad idea to lube your clutch cable if you've never done that before while you're doing this. It's a good opportunity here. Let's get the clutch cable slid into our lever, like so. Rotate it around. Come over here, and let's get it through the adjuster, lock. Be very aware of your clutch switch so you don't come into that plunger on an angle and possibly break it. Then rotate the lever into the perch, like so. Kind of hang there. Get the bolt that it's going to pivot on. Rotate it around until it drops in the slot, like so. As we did on the brake side, you want to make sure the lock nut, the locking portion of the nut, is facing away from the clutch perch. Let's get it started by hand. And now we can torque it down. Just want to make sure everything is just moving freely here, okay? Now the most important step with clutch lever replacement is going to be clutch cable adjustment. You need to adjust the amount of free play that you have here. If you adjust it so that there is no free play whatsoever, let me kind of get you to that point so you can visualize here. Like that's nothing, okay? What's going to happen is that's already, right, opening the clutch up just a little bit. If you go out and ride like that, even on a bike with the available power this one has, that clutch is going to start slipping. When it begins to slip, it goes from beginning to slip to totally garbage, just like that. Even more so if you have a high horsepower bike. You have 1,000 or something, you go out like that, that thing is going to be smoked real quick, and you don't want to do that to yourself. So when you're adjusting this, you want to make sure that you leave an adequate amount of free play. Now that you have an adjustable lever like this, you're able to adjust where the clutch engages first for the rider by using this, more so than just the clutch cable adjustment. So let's go ahead and get this to a reasonable amount of free play. And if you're going to err to any side, err to, man, that's a little too much. We're going to go right there. And I'll fine tune this as I ride it before Max gets back on it. Like I'm actually going to ride it at Barber, and I'll tighten up the adjuster. Now let's check the position of the lever. Make sure that we're happy with it. I like that. Let's sweep the bars. Make sure we're not making contact anywhere. Everything looks good. Double check all your controls. Once you've double checked the bike, take it for a short test drive. Make sure everything feels good. Just a short little ride. Come back, re-inspect, especially if it's the first time you've done levers on your bike. Come back, take a quick look at it for sure. It's important. Nothing goes wrong here. From there, you're good to go. And then blend into your normal maintenance, right? Just a simple little routine, and maybe even before every ride, just touch a few things on the bike. You know, just kind of touch the clutch lever, the bolt. You know, now you know where the pivot bolt is. Make sure the perch is tight. Make sure that looks good. Most importantly, your brake lever. Come over here and just make sure the pivot bolt's in there, everything's smooth. You know, at the track, we'll even go to the rear set, so just kind of take a look at the shifter and the pegs and maybe the exhaust bracket and make sure everything's good to go, because from time to time, things happen, things can come loose, and you want to make sure they don't create a problem for you when you're on the road. So there you have it. This is our CRG RC2 lever install on our 2015 STG Yamaha R3.